Okay, so get this. You want to know if China's playing fair in the global marketplace, right?
Yeah.
Specifically, are they like manipulating their currency, the yuan, to like get ahead? We've got a ton of your research right here.
Hmm.
Articles, reports, we even got some videos. So let's just dive right in, okay?
Sounds good.
And try to unravel this whole economic mystery. And thankfully, we have an expert in global economics here to help us out.
Happy to be here.
Now, you might already know that China's a giant when it comes to exports, right?
Right.
We're talking over $3.5 trillion worth of goods shipped out in 2023 alone.
Wow.
That's more than 10% of the entire world's total.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Picture this in your head, right? A line graph, and it's got China's exports, and they're just shooting up like a rocket over the past few decades. It's pretty wild.
It is.
This incredible growth has made some people wonder, is this natural, or is China kind of tweaking the yuan's value, to make their products just totally irresistible on the world stage? To unpack that, we need to start with the basics, right?
Right.
What does currency manipulation even mean?
Yeah, so you can think of it as a government or a central bank, sort of using their power to nudge their currency's exchange rate in a certain direction.
I would.
Imagine you're online shopping and you're eyeing this new gadget, right? And it ships straight from China.
I do a lot of online shopping.
Yeah. So if China weakens their currency, suddenly that gadget looks a lot cheaper and you're much more likely to just click buy.
So it's like giving their exports like a secret discount to outshine the competition.
Exactly. Yeah.
Clever, but is it fair play?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. It can definitely boost exports and shield domestic industries, at least
Yeah.
for a while, but it does raise questions about whether everyone's competing on a level playing field.
Right, because other countries might cry foul if they feel like China's, bending the rules a little bit.
For sure, yeah.
So how has China actually handled its currency in the past? I mean, has it ever crossed the line into like manipulation territory?
Well, to answer that, we need to rewind a bit. Up until 2005, China kept the yuan tightly pegged to the US dollar.
Okay.
So this basically meant that the yuan's value was fixed and, some argue, kept artificially low.
Mm.
Think of it like, a dog on a very short leash.
Okay.
It can move a little, but not far from its owner, the US dollar in this case.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And get this, during that period when the yuan was pegged, China's exports just exploded.
Right.
Between 1995 and 2005, they were growing at an average rate of 17.3% every year.
Huge growth. Yeah.
Now, I'm no economist, but I mean, that seems like a pretty big coincidence, don't you think?
It's certainly a connection worth exploring. Now, after 2005, things got a bit more flexible. China moved to a system where the yuan could fluctuate a bit more.
Okay.
It's like giving that dog, we were talking about, a slightly longer leash.
Okay, yeah.
Instead of being tied just to the US dollar, it was now linked to a basket of different currencies.
So did this new system, did it change China's export game?
Well, their exports kept rising, but the pace did cool down a little bit. They were averaging around 11.7% growth per year between 2005 and 2015.
Okay.
Like the dog, could explore a larger area now, but it wasn't sprinting quite as fast.
So loosening the leash might have had some impact, but it's hard to say for sure. There are always other factors at play in a global economy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the dog just got tired.
Exactly. There's never just one thing.
Yeah.
Now, buckle up, because things get really interesting in 2019.
Oh, boy.
The U.S., under President Trump at the time, officially slapped China with the label currency manipulator.
Ooh, that's a pretty serious accusation.
Yeah, it's like accusing the dog owner of secretly nudging the leash to give their pet an advantage in a race.
So what evidence did the U.S. have? Like, what exactly makes a country a currency manipulator in their eyes?
So they've got a three-part test. First, a country needs a hefty trade surplus with the U.S., specifically over $20 billion.
Okay,
China definitely clears that hurdle.
I bet.
In fact, their surplus with the U.S. was a massive $270 billion in 2023 alone.
Wow, that's a huge gap.
Yeah.
What are the other two parts of this test?
The second is a significant current account surplus,
Right.
meaning a country is sending out way more goods and services than it's bringing in. Imagine a scale, right? Exports on one side, imports on the other.
I'm picturing it.
For a country to be labeled a manipulator, their exports need to significantly outweigh imports.
Okay, makes sense. So does China pass this second test?
Here's where it gets a little trickier. While China often runs a surplus, it doesn't always tip the scales dramatically enough to hit the level the U.S. considers manipulative, especially in recent years.
Mm,
For example, in 2019, the year they got labeled a manipulator, their surplus was actually relatively small compared to their overall economy.
interesting. So they ticked one box, but maybe not this one.
Yeah.
What's the final part of the U.S. test?
The third criteria is a pattern of one-sided intervention in currency markets. Think of it like this. Imagine a country is secretly buying tons of foreign currency, which can make their own currency appear weaker.
Okay.
That's the kind of behavior the U.S. is looking for.
Hold on. This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
You're telling me the U.S. accused China of weakening its currency, but there's evidence China was sometimes actually trying to make the yuan stronger.
That's right.
Now, that's a plot twist.
It does seem counterintuitive. Let me explain. Between 2015 and 2016, China saw a lot of money flowing OUT of the country.
Oh, okay.
It's like everyone was suddenly trying to trade their yuan for other currencies, which can make the yuan drop like a rock.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what did China do to stop this, financial freefall?
China's central bank, the PBOC, stepped in and spent a huge chunk of its reserves to buy yuan, essentially propping up its value. Imagine trying to, catch a falling vase before it shatters. That's kind of what they were doing.
And that must have cost them a fortune, right?
It did. China's total reserves actually shrunk from $3.9 trillion in 2014 to $3.1 trillion in 2016.
Wow.
That's a lot of money just to keep the yuan from weakening too much.
Okay, so if China was trying to keep its currency strong, does that mean the U.S. got it wrong?
Well, it definitely adds another layer to this already complex story. Remember, the U.S. later removed the currency manipulator label in 2020.
Oh, they did.
Yeah. Perhaps China agreed to ease up on any moves to weaken the yuan, or maybe there were other political or economic factors at play. It's rarely simple in international finance.
It sounds like we need to dig a little deeper into this whole manipulation debate. It's clearly not as black and white as it might seem. And that's exactly what we'll do after a quick word from our sponsors. Stay tuned.
You know, it's important to remember that this whole idea of currency manipulation, it's a bit subjective. There's no official rule book that everyone agrees on, right?
Okay, so it's kind of like you say tomato, I say tomato. It all depends on your perspective.
Yeah, precisely. From a strict free market viewpoint, anytime a government interferes in currency markets, they're kind of messing with the natural forces of supply and demand.
Okay.
But, in the real world, most countries do some level of currency management. It's like a gardener might, prune a plant to help it grow better.
That's true. Central banks all over the world, they tweak interest rates, they buy or sell currencies to try to influence those exchange rates. It's just that when China does it, everyone seems to pay extra attention.
Yeah.
I guess because they're such a huge player in the global economy.
Exactly. China's the world's second largest economy, so their actions have ripple effects across the globe. Even a small nudge from the PBOC can make waves internationally.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
Why is the U.S., why are they so focused on China's currency moves? Is it just about fair trade, or is there something more going on?
Well, the U.S. has argued for a long time that a weaker yuan gives Chinese companies an unfair advantage.
Okay.
Making things tough for American businesses and workers. They say it's like China's playing with loaded dice, making their products cheaper in the U.S. while American goods become more expensive in China.
So it's about protecting American jobs and industries from what they see as unfair competition.
That's a big part of it. But remember, there's also a kind of a geopolitical tug of war happening between the U.S. and China.
Right.
They're both vying for influence on the world stage, and economics is a key battleground.
So these currency manipulation accusations become another weapon in this larger power struggle.
Yeah.
It's not just about economics anymore. It's about global dominance.
You got it. It's a way for the U.S. to apply pressure on China, try to gain leverage in trade talks and other diplomatic situations.
Wow. So this is about a lot more than just money, huh?
Yeah.
It's about global power, national security, the whole shebang.
Absolutely. This currency debate is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle.
Okay, so we've heard the U.S. side of the story.
Right.
What about China? Why do they manage their currency the way they do? What are they trying to achieve?
Well, China has its own set of goals, both economic and political. One of their top priorities is maintaining stability. They don't want to see any wild swings in the yuan's value that could disrupt their economy or lead to social unrest.
It seems like stability is a I don't know, it's like a recurring theme when it comes to China's economic policies.
You're right. They've learned from history. They've seen what can happen when currencies crash and burn, and they're determined to avoid that.
Yeah.
They also want to keep those exports flowing,
Hmm.
boost economic growth, which a stable and, to some extent, a managed currency can help them do.
So they're walking the tightrope, right? Trying to balance that need for stability at home, but also like this desire to be a major player in the global market.
Exactly. And the challenge for China is to manage their currency in a way that meets their needs without getting other countries, especially the U.S., too riled up.
Okay. So after all this back and forth, I mean, is there a clear-cut answer to the question, is China a currency manipulator?
Unfortunately, there's no easy answer. It really depends on your perspective, how you define manipulation, and what factors you prioritize.
It's starting to feel like one of those optical illusions where, like, what you see depends on how you look at it.
Yeah,
One person's manipulation is another person's economic strategy.
that's a great way to put it. What looks like sneaky manipulation to some might be seen as perfectly reasonable policy by others.
All right, so let's try to bring this all together for a listener who's been patiently following along on this deep dive.
Right.
What are the key takeaways here? What's the bottom line?
The most important takeaway is that there's no black and white answer here.
Yeah.
This is a nuanced issue with many shades of gray. It's crucial to understand the economic and political backdrop, the historical context, and the arguments from both sides.
So it's not as simple as just like pointing fingers and saying, gotcha.
Exactly. It's about careful analysis, critical thinking. It's about understanding everyone's motives and goals and recognizing that there are often conflicting interests at play.
We need to avoid oversimplifying things and resist the urge to jump to conclusions.
Absolutely. The truth is, China's currency practices are complex. They've changed over time, and they'll likely keep evolving as the global economy shifts and China's role in that economy continues to grow.
Okay, so we've unpacked a lot here. We've looked at the history of China's currency policies. We've explored those U.S. accusations of manipulation, and we've considered the various perspectives on this whole debate. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with one final thought-provoking question. Putting aside all the accusations and finger-pointing for a moment, what does China's growing economic power mean for the global financial system? What does the future hold?
Now, that's a big question, and one that deserves its own deep dive. As China's economy keeps expanding, its influence on global markets will only get stronger.
Right.
This raises important questions about the future of the U.S. dollar as the world's dominant currency, the stability of the international financial system, and how the balance of power might shift in the coming decades.
So is China's rise a threat or an opportunity? Will it lead to more cooperation or increased competition? These are questions that, world leaders, economists, even everyday people will be grappling with for years to come.
And those are questions we'll continue to explore here on The Deep Dive. Stay tuned for more insights and analysis as we delve into the ever-changing world of global economics.
It's amazing how a single topic like currency can open up a window into these like massive global shifts.
Yeah.
It's not just about numbers and exchange rates. It's about like power, influence,
Yeah.
how the world is reshaping itself right before our eyes.
What's particularly fascinating is that as China's economy matures and it integrates more deeply into the global system, their own motivations might change.
Huh.
Strategies that worked for them in the past, like focusing heavily on exports, may not be as effective in the long run.
So what could that mean for the future? Are they likely to change their approach to managing the yuan?
It's definitely possible. China's already taking steps to make the yuan a more international player,
Okay.
allowing it to be used more widely in global trade and finance. This could signal a move toward a more market-driven exchange rate system, although they're likely to keep a firm hand on the reins.
So not a sudden U-turn, but a gradual shift in direction.
Exactly. They're going to be cautious and deliberate, carefully balancing their domestic economic priorities with their global ambitions.
It sounds like China's playing the long game here,
Mm.
positioning themselves strategically for a future where they have a much bigger say in how the global financial system operates.
That's a sharp observation. They're not just reacting to events, they're actively shaping the future. And that's something everyone needs to pay attention to, regardless of where they stand on this whole currency manipulation debate.
This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive. We've gone from the nitty-gritty of exchange rates to
Yeah.
the big picture questions about global power dynamics.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gained a much deeper understanding of what's really at stake here.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation.
Right.
There's still so much more to explore, you know?
Mhm.
So many unanswered questions.
Exactly. And for you, our listener, this isn't the end of the road. We've given you the knowledge, the context, but now it's your turn to form your own opinion. What do you think? Is China a currency manipulator? Or is this all just part of the game in international finance? How do you see China's role in the global economy evolving in the years to come? These are questions without easy answers, but they're questions worth wrestling with. Keep digging, keep exploring, and keep challenging your own assumptions. That's what the deep dive is all about. Thanks for joining us on this intellectual adventure. Until next time, stay curious. You know, we've talked a lot about the economic side of things, but this whole currency issue, it really highlights that delicate dance between, economics and politics on the world stage.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating interplay, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't really separate the two.
Right.
Every economic decision has political consequences and vice versa.
It's like a game of chess where each move affects the entire board,
Right.
both economically and politically.
Exactly. And in this particular game, China's a grandmaster. They're thinking several moves ahead, strategically positioning themselves for long-term advantage.
So what are some of those strategic moves? We've touched on this idea of China wanting the yuan to play a bigger role globally.
Right.
What would that actually look like?
Well, imagine a world where, more international trade is done in yuan,
Okay.
where central banks hold more yuan in their reserves,
Hmm.
and where global financial transactions, increasingly bypass the US dollar.
Yeah.
That's the kind of future China seems to be aiming for.
Wow, that would be a pretty big shift. But why? I mean, why are they so determined to push the yuan onto the global stage? What's the motivation?
Well, there are a few reasons. First, it gives them more control.
Okay.
Right now, the global financial system is heavily dominated by the US dollar,
Right.
which means the US has a lot of leverage.
Yeah.
If China can reduce their reliance on the dollar, they gain more independence
Okay.
and reduce their vulnerability to US pressure.
So more control, less reliance on the U.S. It's about asserting their independence.
Exactly.
Are there any I don't know, economic benefits to pushing the yuan globally?
Definitely. If the yuan becomes more widely used, it could make things easier and cheaper for Chinese businesses to trade internationally.
Okay.
They wouldn't have to convert their currency as often, which can save them time and money.
And plus it could boost demand for the yuan, potentially making it stronger over time.
Exactly. It's a win-win for China.
Mm-hmm.
They get more control, they reduce their reliance on the dollar, and potentially strengthen their currency.
But a stronger yuan could also make their exports less competitive, right?
Hmm.
This seems like a bit of a paradox.
It is a delicate balancing act, and that's why China's moving cautiously. They don't want to rock the boat too much, especially while their economy is still adjusting to these global
It
shifts.
sounds like they're playing a long game,
Yeah.
carefully weighing the risks and rewards of each move.
Precisely. They're not just thinking about today or tomorrow. They're thinking about the next decade, the next century.
Wow, it's really mind-boggling to think about the scale of their ambition
Yeah.
and the potential implications for the rest of the world.
It is. And
Yeah.
and that's what makes this whole topic so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about dry economic theory. It's about, the future of the global order, the balance of power, and how different countries will navigate this new landscape.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the technical details of exchange rates to the, geopolitical implications of China's economic rise.
Yeah.
I feel like we've peeled back the layers of this complex issue
Right.
and revealed the intricate interplay of economics, politics, and global strategy.
And hopefully our listener feels equipped to continue exploring this topic on their own,
Yeah.
armed with a deeper understanding of the forces at play.
Exactly, because ultimately the goal of the deep dive isn't to give you all the answers.
Right.
It's to equip you with the knowledge and context to form your own informed opinions.
For sure.
So as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with a few final questions to ponder.
Okay.
How do you see the relationship between the U.S. and China evolving in the coming years? Will the yuan eventually rival the dollar as the world's dominant currency? And what does this mean for the future of the global financial system? These are big questions, and the answers are far from clear, but they're questions worth thinking about because they'll shape the world we live in for generations to come.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's shaping our world.
Sounds great.
Till then, stay curious.